Thank you, Mr Speaker. I second the motion. Scrutiny is extinct under this government. It's very clear, and they ought to be ashamed of themselves.
The Leader of the House.
That the member no longer be heard.
Question is the member for Griffith be no further heard. All those of that opinion say aye. The contrary, no. If the ayes have it, division required. Ring the bells for 1 minute.
I want to talk to the man at the top, the Prime Minister, and see if he's got any better ideas about reducing our emissions. He's down at the beach, got my Sharkies hat on, so hopefully he's up for a chat. Tim's not scared of coal, so surely he won't be afraid of a few balloons. But one glimpse of my emissions, and it looks like he's headed the other way. It's just like in real life, he's trying to escape the emissions. But the PM's security team are more than happy to get involved. Go on, you can't just barge in here. I'm not barging in. Come on, stay back. I'm not barging in. What's wrong? Did the Prime Minister say, did you want to see the emissions? No, absolutely not. There's no child. Why is he trying to run away then? Because he's scared of our emissions? That's right. He'll be fine. He's not getting away from the problem that easily. You're right. Yeah. Faster than that on the front track. You can't stop me. Go, Prime Minister. It looks like ScoMo would rather skedaddle than come face to face with the issue. Scott, I just want you to give us to Minister. Reducing emissions. Hey, the Prime Minister got it. He's running for his emissions. I'm scared him off. He's scared. Prime Minister's scared of his emissions. Don't blow away. Unfortunately, this is one issue that just won't blow away.
We are at a unique point in human history. We can either, on the one hand, improve the standard and quality of life of all mankind, or we can destroy the planet as we know it.
It is truly tragic. I can't tell you how it feels to wake up every morning smelling the smoke of my country burning for month after month, and knowing that we could have done something about this had we started 10, 15 years ago.
One of the greatest challenges we face is climate change and the threat it poses to the environment. In December last year, after many years' delay, Australia ratified the Kyoto Protocol.
We will require around 500 big polluters to pay a price for every tonne of carbon pollution they put into our atmosphere.
The bill's now certain to become law with the help of the Greens in the Senate.
The carbon tax is a bad tax based on a lie.
Get the wedge!
There will be no carbon tax under a government I lead.
The first act of the new Conservative government in 2013 was to sack me and my commissioners and to take down our website.
The PM was in Port Moresby, telling Pacific Island nations he's very concerned about the prospect of them succumbing to rising sea levels.
Time doesn't mean anything when you're about to be, have water lapping at your nose.
2015 and 2016 have seen a quite shocking acceleration in surface temperatures, ocean temperatures. The first few months of 2016 have been pushing 1.5 degrees above the pre-industrial average.
The data has been corrupted, and we know that the 1930s were warmer than today.
Yeah. Corrupted? What do you mean corrupted?
Been manipulated
by
NASA. By the CIA, yes.
Australia is experiencing unprecedented extreme heat and setting new records at an alarming rate.
A one-time warrior for climate change action has been forced to back down from his target to reduce carbon emissions after he couldn't get the support of his own party.
January was officially Australia's hottest month since records began more than a century ago.
Australia has warmed by just over 1 degree on average.
In most countries, far more people die in cold snaps than in heat waves, so a gradual lift in global temperatures might even be beneficial.
People are dying.
Entire ecosystems are collapsing, and all you can talk about is fairy tales of eternal economic growth.
This is coal. Don't be afraid. Don't be scared.
The Treasurer knows the rule on crops.
It's coal.
Sorry, move over, don't stop, just keep coming.
The number of fires and the size of the fire edge is unprecedented.
The worst could be yet to come.
The suggestion that there's any one climate policy that has contributed directly to any of these fire events is just ridiculous.
No, you're an idiot, mate. You are out. You're not welcome, you scammer! Scammer!
To try and make out that somehow or other the Australian government could have done something by reducing its carbon emissions that would have reduced these bushfires is just complete nonsense.
There is you, Mr Kelly, with respect, a senior politician who still doesn't think this has anything to do with a heating up planet. Wake up. Wake up.
In the years ahead, we are going to continue to evolve our policy in this area to reduce emissions even further, and we're going to do it without a carbon tax and without shutting down traditional industries upon which regional Australians depend for their very livelihood.
You look at all those years and the political football back and forth that climate change became. It looks at the moment like just maybe we're moving past that, but I don't know. I go back to 2007. My worry is that it looked like it then. When Kevin Rudd came in, even John Howard in defeat was advocating an emissions trading scheme, and it ended up being a mirage. And look at the 12 years since. I worry that history is going to repeat itself.
Do you know what, Pevio? I reckon this time's different. I reckon back then it was more of an ideological understanding of politics. This time something's changed.
More removed from people's lives?
Do you know what? I think you could look at the drought, you could have compassion, you could look at bushfires, you could say that's awful. When you've got people in CBD whose children are getting cortisone injections to stop them from getting asthma, when you've got people watching our incredible, beautiful native animals possibly getting to the point of being endangered, I think something has switched. And I now hope that the country's now going, do you know what? This is not just an environmental cost. This is not just an economic cost. This is a social cost. There are people that will be scarred for this for life. And I think for the first time we've always spoken about climate refugees. People have just thought this pie in the sky idea of that happens in third world countries. When those kids were crying, starving in Malakuta and stranded on the beach, couldn't get out, I reckon for the first time Aussies looked at themselves and went, do you know what? They went, shit, this is real.
I hope you're right. I mean, Catherine, you're from Queensland. Is that the view up there? That's where the coalition did best at the last election.
Oh, Queensland is a great place to live. You've got to know that. You've also got to know a bit about the election result and the nature of Queensland. It's a very decentralised state. Primary industry is a major employer, agriculture as well, but so is tourism. We've got a major natural asset right up the coast of Queensland, which people are keen to protect. I think you've also got to remember just the number of people employed by mining. And, you know, I grew up in Mount Isa, I've lived in Gladstone, I have friends and family in southeast Queensland that are employed by the mining sector. That said, you have people in places like Townsville which have been battling high unemployment for a long time, now staring down the barrel of uninsurable homes because the scale of the disaster that Queensland deals with is likely getting worse.
No cuts to education, no cuts to health, no change to pensions, no change to the GST, and no cuts to the ABC or SBS.
You've made a promise, Mr. Abbott, that you won't change the legislation on workplace relations. But can you make the promise that you won't do it via a back doorway by changing the regulations?
Look, we're not going to change the legislation. Work choices is dead, buried, cremated. That's the truth. I can't make it any stronger than that.
Well, yes, you can. Will you agree, as Tony says, that you won't touch any of the regulation?
Well, we won't do anything that brings any aspect of work choices into play.
So no, you won't make the promise on the regulations, will you?
Well, look, I mean, there are all sorts of regulations that are made all sorts of times to cover all sorts of day-to-day issues, but how can I bring back work choices if I'm not going to change the legislation? Bringing back work choices would require changing the legislation. The legislation will not change, and work choices is dead, buried, cremated.
Could you fiddle around the edges with as Tony's suggesting, fiddle around the edges with the regulation, though?
It's dead, buried, cremated. I just say to all of the callers, dead, buried, cremated.
Truth, the whole truth, nothing but
dead,
the truth?
Buried, cremated.
Written down?
Give me a bit of paper, I'll sign it here. Dead, buried, cremated. Dead, buried, cremated.
That's all the words I want. Dead, buried, cremated. Work choices. Dead, buried, cremated. And a signature and a date. This is the first contract of the election campaign, and it's an awful gimmick, but it's my fault.
It's the 19th today, isn't it?
That's about the 19th, yeah.
There you go.
Well,
you
let's
can
have
frame that. Work choices. Dead, buried, cremated.
One of your major policies, the National Broadband Network, is in the news today. Its CEO says it may never turn a profit. There are acres of customer complaints.
Well, Lee, you know as well as I do, that's a grossly unfair question, because what we launched as the National Broadband Network was fibre optic to the premises nationwide, because it would be that model which actually delivered the revenue stream long-term to make the NBN financially sustainable. And it was that on which it was modelled. So what did Abbott and Turnbull then do? They turned it on its head and made it fibre optic, not to the premises, but to the node, that mystical point somewhere in the neighbourhood. Position adopted by the Conservatives in the 2013 election seems to have been identical with that preferred by News Limited. The News Limited did not want fibre optic to the premises, and the reason they didn't want that was because it would provide direct competition to the Foxtel cable television network in this country from service delivery companies like Netflix.
Our NBN train wreck. It was supposed to make Australia an internet world leader. Instead, we're a laughingstock. An astonishing admission from the Prime Minister today on our troubled NBN, describing it as a train wreck.
But there have been real problems with people not getting the speeds that they believe they're paying for, or that they have paid for.
Malcolm Turnbull says he rescued the country from a calamity under Labor.
It was a folly, the way the Labor Party set it up, and we are sorting it out.
But that was 4 years ago, and he admits his product is still far from perfect.
I am determined to ensure that we address those issues and that people get the speeds they have paid for.
Labor's original plan was to lay high-speed optic fibre cable to every home. To cut costs, the coalition opted for laying fibre to a neighbourhood hub or node, with copper wire running from there to each home.
If you're on that side of the street, fibre to the node, the right-hand side, happy days, fibre to the premise.
What I said in the lead up to the election was that our goal was to ensure that everybody had access to at least 25 megs by 2016. What I said in the lead up to the election